Courtrooms are meant to be places of justice, truth, and resolution, but sometimes they become the backdrop for shocking and heartbreaking tragedies. Whether it's a sudden collapse, a vengeful act, or a moment of unbearable emotion, these rare but unforgettable incidents leave behind a haunting silence that echoes far beyond the walls of the courtroom. In this video, we're diving into 5 of the most tragic courtroom deaths of all time.
You're a student for 7 months. Leave the face of her.
This was no ordinary trial. Inside a Dayton, Ohio courtroom, Kaisen Wilkins was turning the justice system into chaotic theater. He wasn't just another defendant, he was on trial for attempted murder, charged with felonious assault, firing into a home, and illegal weapons possession. But what made this case unforgettable wasn't the crime, it was what unfolded inside that courtroom. Wilkins made a bold decision. He would represent himself. No lawyer, no filter, just him against the system. And from the beginning, he treated the courtroom like a battleground. He accused the court of conspiring against him, claimed he was being lynched, disrupted proceedings so often that Judge Mary Catherine Huffman had to repeatedly warn him. At one point, he even shouted, "Just get a tree and bring it in here," insisting the court was staging a modern-day lynching. After 3 days of delays, the judge had had enough. "You've had months to prepare," she told him. But Wilkins wasn't finished. As he began cross-examining a witness, his chance to seize control, something strange happened. He stopped mid-sentence, clutched his chest, and collapsed. The courtroom froze. Was it real? A heart attack? Medics rushed in, but something was off. His breathing was normal, pulse steady. Deputies and a nurse examined him. Their verdict? He was faking it. Judge Huffman didn't blink. Wilkins slumped deeper in his chair, eyes glassy. A deputy brought out smelling salts. One sharp whiff, and Wilkins shot upright. But the judge wasn't buying it. "Mr. Wilkins, do you have any questions for this witness?" she asked. Silence. "I'll take that as a no." His collapse, it turned out, was just a desperate attempt to derail the trial. But it failed. Judge Huffman stripped him of his right to self-representation. Standby counsel took over. The trial went on. The charges were serious. Back in 2004, Wilkins had told his friend he was paid $10,000 to kill Reginald Brooks. The next day, Brooks was ambushed by someone with an assault rifle. Brooks shot back and identified Wilkins to 911. Wilkins later confessed to his friend, who saw him discard his bulletproof vest and clothes after the attack. Police recovered matching evidence. Wilkins ran, lied about his name, but it was too late. The case was airtight. At trial, Wilkins claimed unfair witness notices and argued his collapse had prejudiced the jury. But the court saw through it. Medical personnel confirmed nothing was wrong with him. His silence afterward was viewed as obstruction, not illness. The jury found him guilty of everything: assault, illegal discharge, possession while under disability, and being a repeat violent offender. 42 years in prison. No mistrial, no sympathy. In the end, the man who tried to turn the courtroom into a stage ended up behind bars, his final act falling flat before a judge who refused to play along.
Triple murder suspect Robert Seaman jumps to his death inside the Mahoning County Courthouse. His body brought out of the rotunda just about an hour ago. Workers.
It was a quiet Monday morning at the Mahoning County Courthouse, until it wasn't. Robert Seaman, 48 years old, walked calmly alongside 2 deputies. No handcuffs, no visible resistance, just another routine escort to a courtroom on the 4th floor. But what happened next sent a wave of shock and horror through everyone in the building, and left a stain on the marble rotunda below that no one will ever forget. Seaman wasn't just any defendant. He was facing trial for one of the most horrifying crimes in recent Ohio memory: the arson murder of a 10-year-old girl, Corinne Gump, and her grandparents, Bill and Judy Schmidt. Prosecutors believed Seaman set their home on fire deliberately because Corinne was set to testify that he had raped her, a child burned alive to silence her forever. The charges were so heinous that if convicted, Seaman would likely face the death penalty. And the evidence? It was overwhelming. The fire was ruled arson. Corinne and her grandparents were found in the charred remains of their home. Investigators uncovered damning connections, motives, timelines, testimony. Assistant Prosecutor Dawn Cantalamessa said plainly, he knew the evidence against him. Every witness we spoke to wondered why he hadn't taken a plea. Maybe now we know why. As Seaman approached the courtroom for a final status hearing before the trial, he suddenly slowed his pace. The deputies continued walking, but Seaman paused for only a split second. Then, in a flash of horrifying clarity, he bolted toward the railing, 4 floors up. No hesitation, no scuffle, no warning, and then he jumped. The marble rotunda below echoed with the sickening finality of a body hitting stone. Chaos erupted. The courthouse locked down. Ropes were placed around his lifeless body until paramedics arrived. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. Security footage later confirmed it all. A quick dash, a deliberate leap, an apparent suicide right there in the heart of the very courthouse where justice was about to unfold. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't an impulsive stumble. It was a final, calculated escape. Sheriff Jerry Green watched the footage himself. There was no scuffle or anything, he said, shaking his head. He just went, and just like that, Robert Seaman was gone. No trial, no verdict, no chance for the families of Corinne, Bill, and Judy to confront him in court. No justice, only a sudden, hollow silence. Seaman's attorney, Tom Zena, said he was stunned. His client had always claimed innocence. Just days before, Seaman had calmly asked when he'd be transported for the trial. "We'll see you there on the 12th, Zena had told him. No one imagined those would be the last words spoken to him, but prosecutors weren't surprised. In fact, to them, Seaman's jump spoke volumes. "It's very telling," Cantalamessa repeated. He knew what was coming. Robert Seaman took the one escape route he still had control over. And in doing so, he denied everyone else the one thing they had left. The truth, spoken out loud in court, in front of a jury. He didn't just fall that day. He fled from accountability, from a trial he knew he couldn't win, from the eyes of a little girl who never got the chance to speak. Some called it justice denied. Others saw it as a confession written in bone and blood. But one thing was certain. The echoes of Robert Seaman's final act will haunt that courthouse forever.
So. Gut, in zurück? Ja. Wieder zurück. Super.
It started like any other day in the small German town of Euskirchen. People came and went from the district courthouse, lawyers with folders, families with worry in their eyes, and judges settling yet another case. But by the time the sun had set on March 9, 1994, 7 people were dead, dozens were scarred for life, and a courtroom had become a war zone. His name was Irwin Mikolich, a 39-year-old hospital maintenance worker, quiet, a loner, a man who kept to himself. But behind that ordinary exterior, something dark had been growing, something explosive. That day, he had just lost his appeal. A judge had upheld his conviction for violently beating his 56-year-old ex-girlfriend, Vera Lamasic, a $4,000 fine, an official stain on his name. But to Mikolich, it was more than that. It was humiliation, and humiliation, in his mind, demanded revenge. So he left the courthouse. But he didn't go far. Witnesses later said that when he came back, he was almost unrecognizable. Dressed in a black raincoat, dark sunglasses, a headband, and strangely a necklace of garlic cloves. It was theatrical, disturbing. A man dressed like death. Hidden in his backpack was a homemade bomb, and in his hand, a .45 caliber Colt pistol. He walked straight up to Vera Lemsik. She had no chance. He hugged her, then pulled the trigger. Gunshots echoed through the hallway. 2 women who had come to support her, gone in an instant. 2 others, struck down as they tried to flee. Screams filled the corridors. Then he pushed into the courtroom. Judge Alexander Chessesfer, just 33 years old, the man who had upheld the verdict, was his next target. One shot, then another. The judge collapsed. When his magazine ran dry, Mikolich didn't stop. Instead, he reached for his backpack, and with one final violent act, he detonated the bomb. The explosion ripped through the room with horrifying force. Witnesses said the blast threw his body clear out a courtroom window. Some victims were so badly mutilated they couldn't even be identified at first. Blood soaked the courthouse floors. Survivors staggered out, dazed and trembling. 8 more people were injured, but somehow lived to tell the tale. Later, investigators combed through Mikolich's apartment and found a disturbing cache. Chemicals used for making explosives. Proof that this wasn't a spontaneous outburst. This had been planned. For weeks, maybe months. His own brother had warned authorities a year earlier. Told them Irwin was unstable, dangerous and abnormal, he'd said. But nothing had been done. No one listened. And now, 7 innocent people were dead. Among them was Vera's mother. Her lawyer later confirmed what many had feared. Vera had been nearly beaten unconscious by Mikolich during their relationship. The signs were all there, but no one moved fast enough. This attack was not unpredictable, the lawyer said. It could have been prevented. Colleagues at the hospital where Mikolich worked described him as a nobody, polite, reserved, invisible, but that invisibility had become his weapon. No one suspected what he was capable of until it was too late. In the end, the quiet man no one noticed became the face of one of Germany's deadliest courthouse massacres. 7 lives lost, 8 more shattered, a justice system caught off guard, and a town left with questions that would never be answered, because the man behind it all made sure he wouldn't be around to face them.
On the 2nd of April, 1993, Ellie Nesler took the law into her own hands in a Northern California courtroom by shooting to death Daniel Driver in the head and neck 5 times.
It was supposed to be just another court hearing, cold, procedural, maybe even forgettable. But on April 2nd, 1993, inside a quiet California courtroom in the town of Jamestown, everything changed in the blink of an eye. What happened that day wouldn't just make headlines, it would ignite a national firestorm. Ellie Nesler sat silently as the man accused of molesting her 6-year-old son entered the courtroom. His name was Daniel Mark Driver, and this wasn't his first time being accused. In fact, he had a history, convicted before for preying on children. Now he stood accused of molesting not just 1, but 5 boys. One of them was hers. Ellie had watched her son William struggle to understand what had been done to him. She'd seen the damage, the nightmares, the silence, and sitting there in that courtroom watching the man who had shattered her child's innocence, something inside her snapped. During a break in the proceedings, Ellie Nesler stood up, pulled out a revolver, and fired 5 shots directly into Driver's head. He dropped instantly. No chance to run, no plea, no more questions, just silence. The courtroom erupted in chaos, screams, gasps, and scrambling deputies. But Ellie didn't flee. She didn't try to hide. She had done what she came to do, and in that moment, she believed it was justice. News of the shooting spread like wildfire. Some called her a hero, a mother pushed too far, acting when the system seemed to stall. Others called it vigilantism, plain and simple. A dangerous message that justice could come from the barrel of a gun. But Ellie's story wasn't simple. It never was. In the beginning, public sympathy leaned in her favor. A mother protecting her child, a woman confronting a predator. But the cracks soon began to show. It was revealed she had methamphetamine in her system at the time of the shooting. That image of righteous fury, it began to unravel. She was convicted of voluntary manslaughter, a 10-year sentence. But then that too was challenged. Her conviction was overturned due to jury misconduct. She took a plea deal, served just 3 years, and walked free. But freedom didn't bring peace. In the years that followed, Ellie's life spiraled further into the grip of addiction and legal trouble. In 2002, she was arrested again, this time for selling and possessing meth. She claimed the justice system in her county was rigged against her, but the sentence stuck. She served more time behind bars and was released in 2006. By then, the name Ellie Nesler had faded from the national spotlight, but her story would resurface, this time in an even darker twist. In 2005, her son William, the same boy she had once risked everything to protect, was convicted of murder. He had stomped a man to death, a worker on the family's rural property. The cycle of violence had come full circle. Ellie Nesler died of breast cancer in 2008 at age 56, nearly forgotten by the media that once swarmed her story. But for many, she remains a haunting symbol of what happens when justice feels out of reach, when grief and rage eclipse law, and one tragic moment defines a life. What she did sparked a nationwide debate. Was it justice? Was it madness? Or was it something in between? A broken mother, facing a broken system, doing what she believed no one else would. There are no easy answers, only the echo of gunshots in a courtroom and the memory of a woman who pulled the trigger.
The Fulton County Courthouse cordoned off as deputies with guns drawn searched for 33-year-old Brian Nichols. He's accused of stealing a deputy's gun.
It was a Friday morning like any other at the Fulton County Courthouse in downtown Atlanta. Judges in black robes were taking their seats, clerks sorting paperwork, jurors whispering behind heavy doors. No one could have imagined the bloodshed that was about to erupt inside one of the most secure courtrooms in Georgia. Judge Roland Barnes, a man known for his calm demeanor, sharp intellect, and fair judgment, had just begun another day on the bench. At 64, he had handled countless criminal cases, from drug offenses to homicide. But nothing would prepare him, or anyone else, for what was coming. Brian Nichols was in custody, facing serious charges: rape, sodomy, gun possession, and drug trafficking. He was no stranger to violence, and on this day, something in him snapped. As he was being escorted into the courtroom, Nichols made his move. In one swift and brutal moment, he overpowered a female sheriff's deputy, wrestled her gun away, and turned it on the very heart of justice. The first shots rang out just after 9 a.m. Panic surged through the building as Judge Barnes was gunned down in his own courtroom. A man known for his patience, for giving even the worst defendants a fair hearing, was executed in cold blood before he could even react. Beside him, his court reporter, Julie Brandau, was also shot and killed. The courtroom, once a place of order and due process, had been turned into a war zone. Nichols wasn't done. Outside the courtroom, he shot and killed a deputy on a nearby street corner. Another deputy was wounded. Then, as chaos erupted and sirens began to echo through the city, Nichols disappeared, blending into the streets of Atlanta by carjacking a local journalist, Don O'Brien. The reporter had been beaten and left behind while Nichols vanished into the city with a stolen green Honda Accord. Downtown Atlanta went into total lockdown. Every building, every hallway, every alley was searched. Helicopters hovered overhead. Officers from multiple agencies poured into the streets, desperate to find the man who had turned one of the state's highest courts into a killing ground. The entire city held its breath. Inside the courthouse, stunned silence reigned. Judges locked themselves in their chambers. Lawyers stared blankly at one another. Some had heard the gunshots. Others had only seen the aftermath. Blood on the floor, the broken bodies of colleagues, the flashing lights of dozens of police cars outside. A courthouse designed to uphold justice had become a crime scene. As the news broke, so did the illusion of safety that so many believed the justice system could guarantee. And Judge Roland Barnes, once a respected figure behind the bench who just weeks earlier had made headlines for ordering a controversial medical procedure to prevent a convicted mother from having more children, was now a national headline himself for the most horrifying reason imaginable. This wasn't just an attack on a judge, it was an assault on the very fabric of the legal system. A judge, a court reporter, a deputy, gone in seconds. Authorities found Nichols the following day, hiding in an apartment complex in Duluth, Georgia. The manhunt was over, but the scars he left behind were permanent. What haunted people most wasn't just the violence, but how easily it happened. In a building designed for law and order, a single lapse, a single moment of vulnerability, had allowed a man with nothing to lose to take everything from those who swore to uphold the law. And in the wake of the massacre, fear crept into courtrooms across the nation. Judges wondered if they were safe. Bailiffs tightened security. Families asked why Nichols wasn't restrained more securely. Why wasn't he stopped? No answer could bring back Judge Barnes or Julie Brandau or the deputy who died outside that day. Judge Barnes had been more than a legal figure. He was a man who listened, who believed in second chances, who brought a sense of calm into a building filled with conflict, and he died doing his duty, a symbol of justice cut down not by a legal ruling, but by a bullet. The echoes of that day still linger in Fulton County, in hushed conversations, in courthouse hallways, in the memory of every juror who once looked Nichols in the eye, and in the shadow of a tragedy that reminded the nation how fragile safety can be, even in the places built to protect it.